rebuild or the favorites. We here for the latest. South side or the north side, not tuned to the greatest. Home team for the home teams. Both sides got our own rings. On the mound or the long ball, but we don't put the wrong strings. Yeah. It's that time of the year now. Wrigley or Ganty, so the whole league that we hear now. New show with a new mood. Discussions and interviews. Trade rumors that might be. This is Pinwheels and Knife.
Hello and welcome to the Pinwheels and Ivy podcast. I'm Mitchell Kaminski, bringing you White Sox talk every Wednesday afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Two quick topics we're going to be discussing this week. Number one, White Sox, they signed Noah Syndergaard. About 4 years too late. Would have been exciting back in like 2019. But, we'll break that down. He's trying to revive his career. He hasn't pitched in a little bit, so we'll see how he fits into that equation. Now, the first thing I want to discuss here before we get to that, again, it's probably going to be a little bit of a shorter episode. We'll make up for that next week. But last night, so the White Sox lost 4-1 last night. It's been a rough series against the Diamondbacks. They had Nick Capra pitching in game one of that series because it got so out of hand last night. A little bit closer. Luis Robert hit a home run, but honestly, the game got completely overshadowed by a pretty disgusting incident that happened. There's a fan at Ray Field, and he had said something to Ketel Marte, who's an infielder for the Diamondbacks. And during a pitching change in the seventh inning, Marte, you can see, was visibly upset. The manager had to come out and console him. He could barely look him in the eye. He was looking the other direction. Then he later was leaning behind second base. You could see tears coming down his face. Well, it comes out later that during one of his at-bats earlier in the game, and now Marte, a little context here, had, he'd been kind of killing the White Sox all series. He had a home run in that first inning. It's one of two hits he had on the night. But during his at-bat, I guess, in the top of the seventh inning, some fan yelled something about his mother. And his mother, for those who don't know, the fan probably didn't even know either, had died in a car crash in 2017. So obviously that made Marte really upset. The manager and the bench coach for the Diamondbacks are pointing at the fan. They got him ejected from the stadium. And later the White Sox say they're banning him from attending games in the future, which is the right move. Team also today it said that they're going to put a message for Marte on the scoreboard. I've also seen on Twitter some fans are saying they want to give him a standing ovation during his first at bat. So that's all fine and well. I'm glad the White Sox trying to make that thing right. But Diamondbacks, understandably, very upset. I'm going to read a couple of comments here they had. So manager Tori Lavolo, who he was the one that kind of was out there trying to console him. And he said that, like, as soon as the fan said it, he looked back because he'd heard the comment too. He didn't want to really repeat it because he said it was pretty nasty. But he said, quote, so he told the Arizona Republic after the game, I could see he was sobbing. It hurt. I told him, I love you. I'm with you. We're all in this together. You're not alone. No matter what happens, no matter what was said or what you heard, that guy's an idiot. It shouldn't have an impact on you. Now, meanwhile, his teammate, Geraldo Perdomo, he called for the fan to be banned from the game. He said, quote, this can't happen. Everybody knows how Ketel is. He's fun. He plays the game hard. I feel bad for him. I feel mad about it. I hope the MLB can do something with that guy. I don't know who it was, but they've got to do something. We can't afford to do that shit here in the MLB. And he's right. He's right. What stuck out to me. Now, look, a lot of people, this is a bad look for White Sox fans. But I don't think it's necessarily a White Sox fan issue because you see this everywhere, right? I mean, North Side, you can't really be casting aspersions. You guys ruined a man's life for trying to catch a foul ball. We saw in New York last year, fan assaulted Mookie Betts in the middle of the World Series. This is an issue all around. I think fans, especially now with social media, way too comfortable with players. Because you can just talk all this shit on social media, and then you see him face to face. It's like, oh, hey, like Bill Burr used to say, like he had a bit about that. Like you see him in the parking lot. It's like, oh, hey, will you sign my stamp collection? These fans get liquored up. You go to these games, they get way too comfortable saying stupid stuff like that. There's got to be some sort of level of respect. Because I think what gets lost in a lot of this is like these guys, yeah, they're great athletes. They're all still humans. It brought me back to a moment, that Netflix series, The Clubhouse. We followed the Boston Red Sox for a year. And one of the players featured on it was Jared Duran, who I always knew Duran was a good player, but like I gained a lot more respect for him after watching that documentary because he really opens up. It's very good. Cam Boozer, White Sox right now, he's featured in that as well. But he was getting kind of torn to shreds last year because he kind of said a homophobic slur that got picked up on the broadcast because a fan was heckling him, and he calls him a slur. He gets suspended, and his goal was to play all 162 games that season. He missed 2 games. That was due to that suspension. And obviously, it's not excusing what he had said, but he was kind of in the middle of a rough stretch. These guys are under a lot of pressure, right? You have to perform. You have to, much like the Red Sox were in that situation right now. Diamondbacks they're trying to compete for a division. There's a lot of expectations. Martell is 2-time All-Star. So, he's trying to be the anchor of that lineup. There's a lot of pressure on these guys day in and day out. And Duran was saying it's like sometimes we're in there and I feel like a circus animal because you got all these people watching us saying all this crazy stuff while we're under a tremendous amount of pressure. And sometimes, your emotions get the best of you because you forget they're human. So and I think with this fan too, from what I heard, the guy was wearing a Caleb Williams jersey. So he might not have even been a White Sox fan. I don't think he knew that Marte's mom had died in a car crash. Let's be honest. That's knowledge that the common fan probably doesn't know. Especially showing up to a game wearing a Bears jersey, you're probably not like a diehard baseball fan. So the odds that he knew this, probably not. But it just goes to show you better be careful what you say. You can't be just out there saying all this crazy shit. Because these guys are human and something might strike a nerve. Like, honestly, Marte would have had every right to go malice in the palace and jump up in the grandstand and beat the hell out of that guy. And I think it would have been totally justified. I think when the malice in the palace happened, there was way too much overreaction. I think players should go out in the stands more and kick these guys' asses. Don't be saying stupid stuff. You want to get liquored up at a game, fine. If you're going to heckle a player, at least be funny about it. But don't be saying personal stuff. Like, these guys are human. They're under a lot of pressure. You wouldn't like it if you were doing that at your job. Which is why you go to these games to heckle them, because chances are, you can't. You can't do what they are. There's some sort, you want to be a fat slob, fine. But, be nice at least. Be nice. Because I'm sure there's a lot of things they could heckle about you in your life. It's just not open to the public. So I think it's kind of common sense. Again, I'm glad the White Sox trying to make it white. I don't think it's a reflection on all White Sox fans by any means. But, this is an MLB-wide problem. So just show some respect. All right, final topic here I do want to get to. So the White Sox signed Noah Syndergaard. And this is kind of an interesting, I'm going to pull up the details of the contract right here. So Syndergaard, he hasn't pitched in a while. So the White Sox signed him to a minor league contract. He's going to get $30,000 a month. If he makes the majors, that will turn into $1.7 million, I believe, in the majors, plus an additional $50,000 for 40 innings pitch, another $100,000 for each 55 innings pitch, and then 75 innings pitch. And then he has a release clause in there that he can opt out of that contract if he is not in the majors by August 1st. Interesting time, August 1st. Trade deadline, July 31st. Obviously, the White Sox have a couple pitchers. They're expected to be very active this trade deadline. Adrian Hauser, name that comes to mind, they might try and flip. Obviously, Aaron Savali, a lot of people are speculating they're going to try and trade him. I said this last week on the show. I don't think Savali gets traded. Simply because I don't know what the market is at this time. If you're a contending team for, let's be honest, a number 4 to 5 starter in a good rotation. That's what Savali is at this point. He's not having a great year. The White Sox added him to be an innings eater. If they can flip him at the deadline, great. I don't think Savali gets. I don't think he gets traded. So I think that with this opt-out clause on August 1st, it's kind of signaling this is probably when we might see Syndergaard too. Because Syndergaard hasn't pitched. He did not pitch all of last year. He's had some elbow injuries to go along with that. So there's a lot of red flags here. And even when he was past pitching, because he kind of bounced around between a couple of teams, the numbers weren't great. Like after post-Tommy John surgery, now most pitchers that come post-Tommy John surgery, and they're throwing harder. Like they look stronger than ever. But that's not always the case. Syndergaard's case, he went from throwing gas, and he lost a lot on his fastball since then. And he really struggled because of that. So he last pitched in the majors in 2023. He made 12 starts for the Dodgers, 6 starts with the Guardians through 88 2/3 innings. During that stretch, this was concerning, 6.50 ERA. He only walked 6.9% of batters, but opponents hit 291 against him. And he also had a career low strikeout rate. So wasn't missing many bats. Velocity was down and got knocked around the yard. So when he burst onto the scene, it kind of reminded me like when he was a rookie, like his first 2 seasons in the MLB, that's what I thought Michael Kopech was going to be when the White Sox added him, right? Like, and they both kind of similar too, because they both work out. They were big into like the weightlifting, kind of had like the long blonde hair. Now Thor's was a lot longer, but like he finished 4th in the rookie year voting. He had a 2.24 ERA in 150 innings during his rookie year with the Mets. That was back in 2015. The following year, made the All-Star team for the Mets, posted a 2.60 ERA, struck out 29.3% of batters, and he had an over 50% ground ball rate, and that was 183.2 innings. So that's like what he can be at his peak. Obviously, injuries have taken their toll since then. He had the weird, like it was like he had like the weird mouth disease or hand, foot, and mouth disease. He had a torn ligament in his finger. He had a torn lat in 2018. So the injuries really piled up. It's kind of hurt his velocity. So I think for the White Sox, obviously you're not expecting him to be that type of thing. I don't even think you can rely on him to be a quote unquote innings eater. But what it does add, it adds another intriguing arm to the pen, very low risk. And you see Shane Smith, his numbers have kind of started to fall off a little bit. You've seen this with a lot of young players, like Chase Maedroff too on the offensive side. He hasn't looked as good. Is that because I think Chase Maedroff stinks? No, I don't think Shane Smith stinks either. Like for a Rule 5 pick, what he's done this year, fringe All-Star, it's incredible. You're bound for a couple bad starts. But if it's his first full year in the rotation, like it is for a lot of these guys, and we've seen that he struggles going deep into games, like after, once he kind of eclipses that like 70 to 80 pitch mark, there's a noticeable drop in his stuff. And I think White Sox, obviously, they're seeing this too. They're trying to protect these guys. You now got Jonathan Cannon on the IL, Jonathan Cannon and Davis Martin, both on the IL. So I think by they bring in a guy like Savali to try and protect this rotation. And I think Thor adding Syndergaard, kind of the same thing. Hey, let's see what we got. If we do trade one of these guys, this guy could be an option that we can bring up. We'll give him a little bit of time to ramp up in AAA Charlotte or in the minors, wherever. We can call him up. And, I think he did talk after they added Savali, like they would be open to doing a 6-man rotation. So if you trade Hauser, then Thor would be a good candidate to have the 6-man rotation because he hasn't pitched in a while either. He's going to have to build up some. You're preserving Shane Smith long-term while still giving him some innings. The White Sox have used more openers this year than any other team in the MLB. And some of it's been by design, but some of it's just because like injuries that they've been kind of forced to because they're trying to protect a lot of these guys. So I think it's just another insurance policy. They're adding another guy to the mix. You take a flyer on them. I don't mind him taking flyers on guys. I think it's a good guy to take a flyer on. Do I think it's going to work out? No. Do I think he's going to be a good, an effective pitcher for the White Sox? Probably not. But you know what? He's cheap. Minor league deal? Why not? Get fans in the seats? I'm interested to see how Syndergaard would look in a White Sox uniform. I think it'd be kind of cool. Obviously, a couple years too late, but could hurt, right? Couldn't hurt. It is well worth the flyer. So we'll see what they can do. Team's not been playing too well as of late. They look good against Toronto, but after they had that really good stretch, they kind of lost 7. They lost 7 in a row. Growing pains to be expected. MLB's tough. Fitz talks about this all the time, especially you look at a guy like Maedroff. I'm not pressing the panic button on him. I know he's been in a little bit of a slump, but like that's what's going to happen. These guys get hot. Pitchers get enough tape on them. These teams adjust. So this is how you can tell if he's really going to be a good major leaguer. How do you respond back? How now do you adjust to their adjustments? It's all about what this game's about. That's why you see guys going on hot streaks. That's why you see players coming out of nowhere. So we'll see. Real quickly, too, Luis Robert Jr., he's been kind of the center of trade talks. Another guy that's having pretty terrible season this year for the most part. Now, he is playing very good defense in center field. He is near the top of the AL in stolen bases. And, every once in a while, he reminds you what can do. He tore the cover off the ball. I think he had a ball like 107 miles an hour yesterday for a home run. Because it does seem like the White Sox are trying to trade him. I'm sorry. I mean, I might be in the minority here too, but I think if you got a guy that he's got that club option for $20 million in the next 2 years. Now, there's a report that came out that the White Sox, they are looking, they said, and any trade for him, because they're trying to unload Andrew Benintendi too, they're willing to include cash to try and sweeten the pot. But I think the fact that they're willing to include cash, it tells you all you need to know. It's like teams aren't interested. They're not getting a good prospect back. That's why they want to include the cash, so they can get something of value. I think it's not worth with a guy like that who can help your lineup for the next 2 years. It's not like you're spending money on free agents anyway, right? Like they're not going out and signing any expensive free agents. They're going to get the Mike Talk. They're going to get these bargain bin guys, which, by the way, the free agents that Getz did sign this year, he kind of nailed it. Like Talkman's been a great pickup. Slater's been a really productive hitter for him. So like the guys that he identified to sign, especially on the offensive side, like he's put in the lineup, like Getz did kind of cook this offseason. But they're not going to be signing any superstars. So I think you can afford to give Luis Robert Jr., you can pick up that option. Knowing that if he bounces back, you still got one more club option next year, or even over the offseason, he gets hot in the second half of the season, and you can get something better in return. There's no point, in my opinion, ponying it up cash. Like you got to kick in cash. You're losing Luis Robert, and you're getting some crappy prospect that might, you're crossing your fingers is going to be a league average replacement level player. Like, I'm sorry, that's not a good strategy. It's not. He's still got potential. Now, I know he's been bad the last 2 years. I do. And we're clinging. It feels like Moncada, where you're clinging to the 20 with Moncada. But like, look at the 2019 season, which turned out to be an outlier. It's kind of the same thing with Robert. Like, look at that 2023 season. And it kind of looks like an outlier. But with Robert, at least, there's enough signs. Unlike Moncada, I don't think I like Robert's body language a lot better. I think he cares a little bit more than Moncada did. And he does stuff on a nightly basis that can help you win games. Like his defense is still excellent. When he does get on base, he's turning that like a walk into a double because he's stealing a base. So, and there is still that threat there. I do think he can still get hot. And all you need is for him to get hot. It's a gamble worth taking. I think if you're going risk reward, they're better off just picking up that option at this point, given what they're going to get in return. Because even though you're ponying up that $20 million, there's still the potential there for him to break out. Because like he's only 2 seasons removed from it. So we'll see. I think it's worthwhile, even just like, again, second half, you could always trade him this offseason. And he's still got the 2 option years. And then maybe you won't have to kick in some cash. Benintendi, I can understand why you need to throw in cash. I think like we've seen what he is at this point, but his defense is he was once a great defender. Now, not so much at this point of his career. I think the White Sox are stuck with him. So I know everyone's anticipating a very active trade deadline. I am not so sure for the White Sox. I think you could see quite a few people moved, but I don't think it'll be some of the big names that everyone's expecting. I think Hauser, you probably are going to see get moved. I think probably Talkman if they can get something for him. But there's not a ton. They don't really have a ton of bullets in there. And, if they're kicking in cash and getting low-level prospects at return, it's like, what's the point? What's the point? That's just my 2 cents. A lot of people might disagree. All right. That's all I got for you. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week.